Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's conversation. We have Dr. Christo Naudé as our guest today. He is a pastor in Johannesburg and also involved in many other projects and counseling services. So welcome, Christo, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Emerencia. It's nice to be here. And good day to everybody that is listening.
Please tell us more about yourself. I quickly introduced you, but please tell us more.
Yes, I'm been a pastor now in a church for about 33 years. And I've been involved in counseling mostly of the time that I'm being a pastor. Although in the last point where I feel that I needed more skill sets, so I started extra learning, do my master's and also my doctorate in pastoral therapy, so that I can be of more use to people that are in need of counseling. So that's where I ended up. I'm married to a school teacher, and I've got two children, a daughter and a son. And that's I think about my background. And then, yes, I'm involved in the community, and I would like to explain something about it at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. That sounds very interesting. And I know that you have much insight into presence. So I'm so curious to hear about your view and understanding of presence.
Yes, thank you for asking. And thank you for the opportunity to share some of my views. And it's not just my view, it's some of the books that I've read about presence. I think in being a pastor, presence is something that is more than just present in the moment. When I read through the Bible and I see a lot of people in the Bible, I think presence is also very appropriate as a way of being with God. A lot of times, I think just of one person, that was Elijah. He went into a cave, and God came with thunder and wind and a lot of noise. And God wasn't in that. God was in the softly spoken wind that blew, and he had to listen very carefully to actually hear the voice of God. And that is just something of, if we talk about presence, where I can relate to presence in the Bible and from that perspective. I've also read some books. One of the books that I've read was from Peter Senko, and the title of the book was just Presence. And he and three other writers came from different views, and they all think and try to write about presence and what it means. And and my own ideas and his ideas, I would like to share some of it today. When we talk about presence, presence is being fully conscious and aware of the present moment. But it is also more than that. It's the appreciation of the presence in deep listening. And Senko is make the point that deep listening is actually being present. And if you take the Imago way of thinking and doing therapy, they concentrate on the whole thing of listening. But this listening that Senko is talking about is actually listening to yourself and listening to all your historical ways of thinking, your preconceptions that you have, and the way that you are making sense. And he says those kind of things are actually the things that you need to listen to, not to enhance them, but to acknowledge them as something that will hinder you to listen even deeper. So presence to him is something of open beyond one's preconceptions and our historical way of making sense. Because he says, as long as our thinking is governed by the habit, the concepts such as control, predictability, standardization, we will continue to recreate practices as they have been. Despite their disharmony, we will continue to recreate practices. And this disharmony is actually, if you look at the wider whole world, something we need to understand that there's the living systems is evolving all the time. And just to stick to your way of listening and seeing and doing will make you miss the evolving environment around you. So it's important to letting go of old identities, making choices to serve the evolution of life. So those are the kinds of things that you actually need to look at and to listen to and to see the evolution of life. Aspects such as letting it come, consciously participating in a larger field of change. So presencing to him is actually seeing that there is something that is coming that is larger than the field that you are aware of. And if you just stay aware of the field that you are in, you are missing a lot of seeing that is available to us. So how do we do presence? Otto Schenker is another writer that's also writing and part of the book, and he's written another book of learning, actually the learning curve in presencing as part of the ongoing search for presence. He says the blind spot concerns not the way and the how, not what we do and how we do it, but the who. He says who we are and the inner place or source from which we operate, both individually and collectively. In other words, it means that the who I am will either help me to see and to partake and be present, or it will hinder me to be present. So one of the things that we can use is when a seed fell into the ground and is planted there, the seed alone cannot become a tree. He needs a seed to engage with his environment to help him develop into a tree. That's presence. So you need your environment to actually facilitate transformation in you, and that is presence goal, to bring forth transformation, whatever transformation means in your life and in my life, and with the circumstances that we have. How do we transform into what we need to be because of where we are and who we are? So those are the kinds of challenges that I think that presence brings to us. It's the way we see, but also the being, the way we be as a human being. So I need to develop capacities to accomplish change and establish networks in order to change, develop a way of service, of serving others, to actually be present. And then there's an interesting thing that one of the other writers is a lady that's part of the book, and she concentrates on stories. And she says stories will tell us how we shape our reality and our experiences. And she says that we need to challenge and being creative, evocative stories of the future. So in other words, presence is not just a static, a way we stay static in where we are. It is actually to challenge us to say presence doesn't mean the here and the now, and that is it. It actually means involving in the evolution of your environment, and that you can actually help shape the environment, the future of the environment, the future of yourself, by the choices and by the stories we can think creatively about where we are and where we're going. So in that sense, presencing of different levels of perception is part of what we need to understand. Yeah, and sensing new realities, if it's there, to actually embrace it and see that we can step forward into this new reality as a way of the reality welcoming us and inviting us in to that. And then for the learning community, I think there is something that we can also take with when we talk about presence, because all learning is about how we interact with our world and different type of capabilities that develop from our interactions. And learning is this interaction and the capabilities, and all in learning integrates thinking and doing. There's different kinds of learning. One learning that we usually do is reactive learning. Thinking is governed by established mental models. Doing is governed by established habits of action. That is reactive learning. But when we think of presence and how we learn, then we are challenged to deeper levels of learning, creating increasing awareness of the larger whole, both as it is evolving and actions, and they're increasingly becoming part of creating an alternative future. And one of the things that I appreciate about your work that you've done is actually open up some of these possibilities and saying, isn't there a better way of looking after a patient? So not focusing on the disease, but focusing on the patient to actually treat the disease. You focus on the patient. And that's one of the things that I feel that is so valuable as to when you're thinking of the medical professions, is to actually look at the patient in order to treat the disease, rather than the other way around. And in that way, you actually validate the patient as somebody that is worth looking after. So reactive learning is governed by downloading habitual ways of thinking and continuing to see the world within the familiar categories we are comfortable with. We act to defend our own interest. Our actions are actually reenacted habits and reinforcing pre-established mental models. Then the different types of learning are possible. And I think one of the things that we need to understand is that everything we do is driven by a question that we want to answer. What question lies at the heart of your work, of your life, of you doing something, of your choices? So that's a fundamental question that will help us to understand what presence means in how we learn, and what questions or question lies at the heart of my life, of your life, of the work we do, and so on. So all learning integrates thinking and doing. And in that sense, I think presence in learning is also very valuable. And then the question will be, why presencing? The start with learning to see. Then moving to openness of a new awareness. Sometimes when we are aware of a new awareness, we're sort of afraid of it. And we say, whoa, I don't want to venture into this new awareness. Although I think that's the challenge when we want to be present, is actually to embrace new awarenesses of what is emerging on our part of it. And then finally leads to action that spontaneously serves and is also supported by the evolving whole. So in that, I think, is some of the ideas that I have about presence at the moment, Emerentia.
That certainly is a lot to think about and to really use, so that our thoughts can open up and that we can think in a new way about presence. And I can immediately see the application in nursing is when nurses are ready to open up and to listen to their own inner voice and their historical beliefs and perceptions. And also when the patient is open to hear and see the nurse, and when they engage in their environment with one another and with the environment, then growth and learning can take place and transformation can take place. And I so like what you say about we keep on doing the same thing and then the same disharmony continues. So if we are open and if we are growing, then new things can evolve and new health systems, new ways of doing in healthcare. And as you are saying, that we are validating the patient, we see the person instead of the disease. So I think what you shared about presence is a wonderful framework and grounding for us to move from when we want to practice presence.
One of the things that I would like to add is when you go outside at night and you look up to the stars, the whole universe above you centers on a small piece of body called the lens of the eye. But it's the whole universe that you see through that. So when we see, what do we see, and do we realize how we see and what we see? So that was one of the things that was really mind-boggling to me, to understand that the human body is so part of the whole, and we are so narrow-minded in a certain sense and are coached to look through the tunnel vision, as they call it. So actually to say, listen, there's another way of looking at it. So yes, that was one of the things that really got me thinking about how we look and what we see. Just to look up at the stars and realize that the whole universe is actually focused on a small piece of the human body. and it helps us to understand that we are part of a very big whole.
Yes, definitely. It's actually, as you say, mind-boggling to think that what we see and how we look determines what we see. So that's amazing. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on presence. I'm sure that it will be food for thought and it will keep our minds busy for quite some time, and it's material for reflection. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
Please tell us more about your involvement in the community and your project. I think it links very beautifully with what you said so far.
Yes, thank you very much. There's a few projects that I would like to just mention. One of it is a very fairly new one that I got involved in, and that was South Africa in Dialogue. It's a fairly new motion or venture that we are trying to do through social justice, that we want to, on the 16th of December, want to make people aware of that we can actually help one another by getting into dialogue with one another. And this dialogue is start talking in a way that people understand that they are heard. Start listening to people, that they get the idea and they feel that I'm listening intently to what they are trying to say. So there's a whole movement at the moment to get people involved in this and get South Africa to actually start talking to one another in a way. And dialogue is just the vehicle. It's not the end. Dialogue is helping us to get to a place where we will have transformation in ourselves and in our views, and start being present in people's lives in a way that they feel safe and they feel heard, validated, and also valued. So I think that is the way that dialogue can help us actually to take this being present very much further into families, into relationships from whichever side, and into different kinds of people, and into cultures and communities. So yeah, hopefully this will bring about new presence also in South Africa through the dialogue that we're trying to get people to undertake and being part of.
No, that's
and then there is, sorry.
I say that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. And then there's a second one, and that is MobiG. MobiG is a online counseling facility that I'm part of, and you can phone or text. Actually, not phone, text the people from 7 in the evening till 10 o'clock at night, and you use data for that, and then there will be facilitators on the other end of your text, receiving it and texting back to you in a counseling session. So you're more than welcome also to look up on MobiG and to see what they can actually help you with. And yeah, there's also 2 courses there. One is a course on trauma for the individual to actually help him or her along their own journey on dealing with trauma. And then there is also one on grief. I think we are a traumatized society, and also grieving, the collective grieving that they talk about. And I think both those courses will help us to actually help other people also.
Wonderful. I, with your permission, would like to put the links to those projects in the description of the video. so that people can learn more and become involved.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I appreciate it if you do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for today's conversation. I enjoyed it very much and learned a lot.
Thank you for having me, and I also enjoyed sharing some of my views with you.
Thank you.